It's time for Drummer Nation. My guest, Harvey Mason, ranks among the most in-demand session drummers of all time. He has worked with Bob James, Chick Corea, the Brecker Brothers, Ritenour, and countless others. He's the drummer on Herbie Hancock's million-seller hit Chameleon, which he co-composed. Harvey has recorded many albums as a leader. As a producer, he introduced the world to the band Seawind. He is a founding member of the contemporary jazz supergroup Fourplay, for which he writes, plays, arranges, and produces. Flip across your radio dial on any given day and you're sure to come across a gem that Harvey Mason helped polish. Sound Synergy's percussion care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Percussion care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best. Check out their website at soundsynergies.net.
I absolutely love playing drums, and I couldn't imagine not having that in my life. And I really, if I could help facilitate that and have an impact on your life so that you can play drums, that means the world to me.
The things that make for a successful gig vary, but when there's a drummer in the band, the drummer really drives it, and it all comes down to the stick. Ultimately, the right stick gives you the sound that you want.
Created specifically for practice sessions, quiet tone practice cymbals by Cymbals are designed to respond and feel like traditional cymbals, right down to their clearly defined bell, so the drummers won't have to change the way they play. Quiet tone practice cymbals by Cymbals.
Hi, this is Stanton Moore. I've been playing and teaching drums for over 30 years. My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Welcome to Drummer Nation again. This is Michael Vosbon, your host, where I am thrilled to present the legendary Harvey Mason. Thank you for doing my show, Harvey. Great to see
Michael,
you.
It's my pleasure to do this. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, I'm so glad I ran into you at the NAMM show. You are nothing less than a living legend. Let's do a little bit of the perfunctory background stuff. I want to get into some serious drum talk, though, but just for maybe the kids who don't know, where are you from?
I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I was there until 18 when I went to go to Berklee College of Music for 3 semesters. I left there and received a full scholarship to go to New England Conservatory, and I graduated from there with a bachelor's degree in music education and performance. And noted Vic Firth was my teacher, which was just fantastic.
That was my next question. So you're you came up with the orchestral tradition, right? You know the whole orchestral repertory for mallets and timps and all that
I
stuff?
sure did. As a matter of fact, my drumming began when I was 7 in public school, and there was no dance band in the early days. I was 7 when I started, and we had a little orchestra and a little band, and that's it. I didn't begin playing the drum set until I was probably 13, when the drummer in the junior high school dance band got sick, and I sat in because I was the best drummer, per se, not playing drum set. So that was where I began playing the drum set, and I started working at about the same time.
Well, you mentioned school dance band. To us older cats, that's a stage band, that's a jazz band, that's a big band.
Yes, stage band, that's correct.
Right, so you came
Dating
up...
myself, huh?
Yeah, well, me too. You came up with the big band background, right?
Oh, yeah, I sure did, yeah. But quickly moved into playing R&B and bar mitzvahs and surfing music, because surfing was big in Atlantic City, and strip clubs and all kinds of clubs. So. And jazz clubs for sure. Spent a lot of time in jazz clubs.
Right. So did you ever have to make that break from being a jazz player to a pop, rock, funk, whatever else it was? Or were you always sort of multifaceted with your stylistic approach?
I was always a chameleon, always playing anything and everything, loved anything and everything. And I mean, played piano in church, and I just loved music in general. So I had no boundaries. I learned country music playing with a country music band. I played with a Latin band in Boston at a place called The Cave, where all the great dancers from Arthur Murray Studios came and danced to our music. So I played timbales in that. So I really, 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 really had a pretty daggone serious music education. It was just on-the-spot learning, and so it was great.
So when you're playing for dancers like Arthur Murray and those guys, I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of things at once here, you have to play cha-chas and merengues and mambos and all those things, right?
Precisely, exactly.
And do you think that's still good training for kids to learn all those things coming up?
I believe so. I don't know that people necessarily call them that now. There are so many different Latin approaches, but I'm not sure they call them by that. But at that time, we were playing strict rhythms that they learned to dance with. So it was really important. And I had some very good Latin players. Don Elias was also in the band as well.
Wow.
And got him Dave Johnson and another girl named Sheila. And it was a very, very original Latin band. We had a ball.
It's gotten so hyper-specific now where every other neighborhood, every 6 blocks in Cuba has a different name to the rhythms. It's hard for me to keep up with all of them unless you're immersed in that. Now, you mentioned the word chameleon. That's the name of your latest album, but it also is the name of a popular Herbie Hancock tune from the album. Well, the album was called Chameleon and made quite a stir, right? Or was the album called
the album
Headhunters?
was actually called Headhunters.
That's right.
And the song that we co-wrote was called Chameleon. I'm a co-writer on that song.
Oh, are you?
And and I named my new record Chameleon because that moniker sort of stuck with me. After making that, guys started calling me, and writers started calling me a chameleon because I was on all types of music. My resume is, if I may be so bold as to say, it spans the entire spectrum of music. From gospel music to R&B to classical music. It's movies, jingles, TV shows, live performances, and it's everything. So I have that, and I wear it very proudly. I'm very proud of that.
That's why you should be. I won't list your credentials here. I encourage the young players to go look them up. But they cover the gamut of music, just as you said. Was that your goal from the beginning? Did you just want to be a working drummer, or did you have a specific set of goals in mind?
Well, initially, when I came out of high school, I wanted to make a living because I came from a very deprived background. So I thought about, I was planning to be a lawyer, but I read an article about Larry Bunker and the studio musicians, and it pictured them in shirts and ties. And I thought, that's respectable. I think I can do that. So then I changed my direction immediately and applied to a couple schools, got in late into Berkeley, so I couldn't get a scholarship, even though I needed one. And I went there and stayed 3 semesters until I was offered a scholarship, a full scholarship to New England. So, and my goal at that point was to be a studio musician, not to be a recording artist, not to be anyone famous, just to go and be a great craftsman and musician. And that was my goal.
Sound Synergy's Percussion Care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Pedal Lube, the only product specifically designed for bass drum, hi-hat pedals, and triggers, as well as all moving metal parts and drum hardware, safely removes grit, grime, and other contaminants while protecting against harmful friction wear. Cymbal Care restores and conditions cymbal surfaces without strippers or harmful polishes. Wear Barrier is a conditioning formula for all drum heads, rims, and even sticks. Percussion Care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best. And when you started that, did it involve a lot of your classical training? Were you playing mallets on things?
As a matter of fact, when I first arrived in Los Angeles in 1970, most people took note of the fact that I was a percussionist as well as a drummer. And there were a lot of drummers, and so I was hired initially as a percussionist for about 2.5 or 3 years. And I was just playing in the section. In those days, we had 5 and 6, sometimes percussionists on jobs. And I met a lot of the guys on a big Texaco commercial. It was like,
you can trust your car to the man who wears the star.
Exactly. And from there, I met a lot of percussionists and started getting more jobs. So that's what I did. I played percussion. Like on all those early Earth, Wind & Fire records, I'm playing timpani, Smokey Robinson, and Motown stuff. I'm playing mallets and vibes and the whole deal. So that was my life. As a matter of fact, John Garrett, a pretty famous drummer in L.A. at the time, used to call me the Triple Threat because he knew I played all the other stuff, but I was playing percussion. He'd heard me.
So if you went into a Motown date and it required percussion instruments like that, were there written parts or were you making those things up?
Oh, no, it was written. And one of the great writers there was a guy named Gene Page who did most of the arranging. So everything was written out. I mean, everything was written out. And it was written in any key. I mean, it was amazing. It did more in movies. There was a lot of movies with the heavies there. So everything was written out. It was no faking on the mallets or timpani. They wanted specific parts.
Well, you first came onto my radar in the mid-'70s with Herbie, and that Chameleon thing. I was a student at North Texas State, and we all had to learn that beat, you know, the funk beat that you played that so many people copied. That record was that something of a career maker for you?
Well, in some areas it was a career maker, but I was well established by the time I worked with Herbie. I was in the studios and I was recording and playing with Carole King and a lot of other big name people. As a matter of fact, I was on a tour with Carole King, which I very rarely toured, in Japan when I received a call from Herbie about doing the record. So I was very well established in the studios and living my dream and loving it. And so much so that when the record was finished and they went on tour, Herbie asked me to go on tour, but I didn't go because I had a very flourishing career recording, which was all I really wanted to do.
I saw that tour with Mike Clark.
Yeah.
Right after that, who also did a fine job, of course. Okay, so you remember the so-called fusion wars of the 70s? You managed to
I don't know about the wars, but I remember the fusion period.
You remember the jazz players were dark on the fusion stuff, and the fusion guys were like, well, this is where it's at, this is new, and you managed to stay out of the fray of that.
I did. It was just music to me, and what we did was pretty on fire, and everyone was taking note of it. So I didn't really participate in that, and I didn't feel that very much because, first of all, I didn't go on tour. I did the record, and I went right back to doing what I was doing. So a lot of people were pretty angry that when they went to the show, all of a sudden they didn't see me anymore. So I got a lot of fan mail about that. Well, where are you? Why aren't you out here? That sort of thing. But I wasn't a part of the fusion wars, but I was a part of the traditionalists saying, don't play that kind of stuff, you know, but I didn't listen to that. I guess they would have said, don't play with Tiny Tim or any of those other acts I had to play with as well. But for me, everything was a great experience.
What, do you consider yourself a jazz drummer?
I consider myself a drummer, a musical drummer that plays all kinds of music. I wouldn't say that I'm just a jazz drummer. As a matter of fact, I think Wikipedia has me down there jazz drummer, and that's, to me, is demeaning for me just to be considered a jazz drummer, even though I've made some pretty important jazz records. But I love just being a musician and a drummer, period, because that means I can play anything, which I've done, and that's my thing. I want to be able to play at every situation, you know, and that's my goal. That's my life.
Well, you certainly have done that. Let me ask you, in the mid-'80s, it seems to me like the music changed with the advent and pervasive use of sequencers, so that now there was a meter to judge ourselves against that was perfect. Other drummers have made some comments about having to make adjustments to that. Did that just come naturally to you when the whole thing shifted to clicks and sequencers and playing with stuff that was metronomically perfect?
Well, clicks became my friend very early in my career because in movies and jingles, very soon after I was in LA, they started using more clicks. And so I was very familiar with clicks and playing with clicks. So when sequencers came in and having to play perfectly, I was really well adjusted and was very comfortable playing either on top of it, right with it, or behind it, and not being afraid. I always thought of the click as my friend. So I really loved playing with it because it took the pressure off of having to be perfect. You know, in the early days, we'd do a jingle or something like that. They'd count off the tempo, and you had to play 59 seconds exactly on the spot with no click. So I remember doing that, and it was a challenge. It was fun. But as soon as they started using clicks throughout a whole song, and they weren't worried about you rushing it because they were editing so much, it took all the pressure off. It was easy for me. So I immediately adjusted and thought when they had the click, it was going to be a great day.
That's interesting to hear that perspective.
Hey everybody out there in cyber world, this is Adam Nussbaum.
Hi, Dave DeCenzo here.
Hi, Bermuda Schwartz here.
Hey everyone, Stanton Moore here.
Hey guys, Johnson Pesta here.
Hey everybody, this is John J.R. Robinson.
Hi, Todd Zuckerman here for the Drum Center of Portsmouth. They're knowledgeable, they'll be able to help you and guide you and make the right choices for you and the music that you play.
From Wingnut to Wuhan, these chaps know what they're talking about. Highly recommended. But what do I know? I'm a drummer.
You also have played the Academy Awards show for decades, right?
Oh yeah, I did over 20 years of Academy Awards shows. I'm very proud of that. a lot of fun, a lot of pressure, and I thrived in that situation.
A lot of pressure. My understanding is they're going to announce the winner of the movie or the actor or whomever, whatever the Academy Award is. And you probably, I imagine, you have a part in front of you with 30 seconds of 5 different tunes.
Exactly.
And then they announce it, and it's on you to kick it off, right?
The guy gives a downbeat, and we just hit, and we have to be right on the time. So I kind of indicate on each movie the approximate tempo. And I'll do it either by tempo or I'll do it by a song that I recognize that I think you have to use at a certain tempo. So that being the case, that's how I kept the tempos the same.
Nobody's giving you beat 2, right? I mean, everybody has to sort of intuit that. I get the downbeat.
Everybody has to be intuit that.
The downbeat is there, but
the downbeat's there, and the snare drum is beat 2.
So you're giving it to them.
I'm controlling the orchestra immediately. And the other key to that is the trumpet player, who was also really, really, really great. Rick Baptiste did a lot of those shows, and the two of us together sort of really controlled the orchestra and saved the orchestra a lot of times.
I'll bet. Now, do you have those tempos? You have certain tempos memorized, and you have it in little groups like classical music, where you have, adagio and allegro and or
well, I didn't use those terms per se, but I used more tempos, moderate, fast, medium fast. Did it that way, so I would know exactly where I was. So those are the terms I used, and I was generally pretty close.
So you mentioned you loved it, though. You love the pressure.
Oh, I really did.
You're one of those guys that the red light comes on and you dig it. You're.
Well, I thrived, and I never, I can say, made a major mistake that I think anyone would recognize.
That's great.
So, and near the end, after doing it for so many years, I started saying, I think I want to retire because I don't really want to make a big mistake on television, where you blow it, or you come in early, you come in late, or you play the wrong tempo or do something silly. So I started thinking, man, I better count my blessings and get out of this. And I ended up still playing probably about 4 or 5 years after that.
It's like your next start after a no-hitter if you're a pitcher, right?
Right.
Leave well enough alone.
Yes.
So it used to be, I think, that the studio guys never wanted to leave town because it meant jeopardizing what you had going on already. Is that
exactly?
That's still kind of a common thread, right?
That's true, I believe. Even though the studio scene has changed now, where it's very difficult for guys to make a great living just staying in town and doing studio work. Because first of all, there's not as much studio work as there was back in the day when we were working 3 sessions every day and Saturdays as well. And there weren't as many great players, I should say, as well. Now there are so many great players, not as much work, so it's spread around quite a bit. So most of the guys will travel with bands and go out, and when they're in town they work, and if they can, if they're not, then that's the way it works, to do both, a little of everything.
Do you think jazz education or music education has had an impact on how many great players there are out there?
I think education in general has had an impact on how many great players there are. First of all, the internet, video, YouTube, and all the lessons there, and the kids are able to see these people. Before, when I was coming up, I had to see them live in a club or something when they came through town, and very rarely did you see everybody, but except that I worked in a great club, so I got to see all the guys. But now the kids get to see them, and the guys see the guys in church. They get to play in church, so it's a whole different ball game now. And there's so many great young players that have amazing technique, and I think they've gained that through the internet.
Is it something of a two-edged sword? I mean, it's great that we can pull up Papa Joe Jones and see him. I never saw him as a kid. Obviously, he passed before I could ever see him. But on the other hand, for somebody like you, there's all kinds of material out there that you don't get paid on if it's on the net. How does that hit you?
Well, I never really thought of it like that. It's exposure, and I think at some point things will turn around where you will receive some remuneration for the videos and things that are there. But at this point, I think of it as promotion, publicity, and gaining fans and an appreciation from people. So I think it'll amortize itself at some point, but probably not right now. But it's okay. I doesn't bother me at all. No.
Okay. Now, I saw you with the band Fourplay. You were co-founder of that band, right?
Exactly, yes.
Tell us about how that started.
Well, Bob James and I have been friends for many years. I went back to New York to play on a Grover Washington record, Mr. Magic, and we became immediate friends. He played golf. I played golf, so we hung out. And he coaxed me to go on the road a few times with him because the music was fun, and we'd go out and play golf. So I had extra incentive to go out and play. And I started making his records, and then he wanted to come to LA to record, and I introduced him to Nathan and Lee, and we were in the studio, and it felt so good that he said, would anyone want to be in a band? And to his surprise, everybody said, I think it'd be great to be in this band. So he was an exec at Warner's at the time, and went back to Mo Austin, told him that he had this great band, and Mo Austin said, sign it up immediately. He came to the studio, we signed, and our first record was platinum.
Created specifically for practice sessions, quiet tone practice cymbals by Sabian are designed to respond and feel like traditional cymbals. Drummers will appreciate their greatly reduced sonic footprint at practice sessions, drum sessions, or anytime they need quiet cymbals. Not only do they feel like a traditional cymbal, they produce a distinct, clearly defined bell tone, offering drummers a much more accurate and natural playing environment. Quiet tone cymbals are manufactured from a tough, durable alloy that resists dents and stains while looking great on any kit. Quiet tone practice cymbals by Sabian.
Those were great records, very well received, very well. They're still played everywhere.
Oh yeah, we're very fortunate. We have 14 records now.
Do you tour with that now?
Oh yeah, we still tour. This year we're taking a hiatus. Unfortunately, our most recent guitar player, Chuck Loeb, died, and we've had a hard time trying to adjust, as he was an important person in the band. It was amazing. So we've used Kirk Whalum for the past year, but we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do as far as sticking with the guitar sound or moving with Kirk to the saxophone. So as such, we just took off this year. We're just going to do 2 shows in April. That's it. And everyone else now we're just creating our solo records and spending a little time at home and enjoying ourselves.
Now, one of the hallmarks of your style, as I hear you play, is in addition to a big fat pocket and groove, is very cleanly executed precision between, I will say, right hand, left hand instead of snare drum hi-hat, because there are a lot of other sound surfaces there. Is that something would you agree with that? Or?
Well, I think, yeah, that sounds good. I like that description. I always try to be clean, and I think I started with that. And my experiences all kind of come together as a collaboration of, I played in the drum and bugle corps, a competition corps, and at that point we had to play very cleanly because we had to play, all the snares had to play, and if you had a nick, you were out, you could just be out of the competition. We were a junior corps for a senior corps, so it was great training for me, and I've used it in my playing. It helped me become a lot cleaner, and also in orchestral playing, again, being very clean and articulate. So I just had that style of being clean and articulate, and it's carried through. So I think you're sort of a synthesis of all your experiences, I played in a surfing band, and then, and you just change up. You do what you have to do.
You just play music, right? And listen to the band and play what's called for.
Try to be musical, yeah. It's just for me, it's about being musical. But being clean is definitely a mark of my playing, and it transferred to recording very, very well. Speaking of recording, you're comfortable on the other side of the glass too, right? Yes, I've produced quite a bit of music and written and done movie scores and the like. What's that? That's a different challenge altogether, isn't it? That's a completely different challenge, and I've enjoyed it, even though I didn't do too much because it was very, very, very very, very stressful. But I've enjoyed it, and working with my son a little bit, who's doing quite a bit of producing and scores. Your son is a very successful hip-hop producer, music producer, let's call it. I don't want to put anything in categories. I'm sure you're very proud of him. Have you worked with him very much? Oh, yeah. Most of his projects I get to play little drums on when I'm in town, so it's fun. He's kept me relevant today as far as recording, so it's a lot of fun. I'm very proud of him. Yes, as well you should be. Speaking of relevant today, you've seen the industry change dramatically in your lifetime, wouldn't you say? Oh, first of all, from the standpoint of recording and from the the use of the internet has made a major impact, and as far as the studio scene being very different and playing live, and yes, the scene has changed completely, and I'm enjoying it because I get to do a little bit of everything, but primarily more live playing now because I play with Fourplay and then I play with my Chameleon band as well. So, and I was fortunate last year to play as a guest timpanist with the London Symphony Orchestra, which was a lot of fun. We played Holt's Planets, and that was a thrill for me. That was my second time playing with them, and that was
the Holt's Planets.
fantastic.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
that's a great piece.
I love that piece of music. Would you recommend to young players that they're comfortable on the other side of the glass, so to speak, that they know the studio? And do you know mics and gear and Pro Tools and all that stuff?
I know mics. I mean, I never really concentrated on which mic I wanted. I know a couple I didn't like, but I left that primarily to the engineer. But I'm comfortable on the other side and about sound, and I put a lot of time in that. Drummers make very, very good producers because we end up listening to everyone and everything that's going on. We have a very keen sense of listening. If you're going to be a great drummer, you have to be a great listener because you have to hear everything and be able to adjust, adapt, pull here, push there. And so drummers are great at that. And it was very natural for me to begin producing. I produced all of my solo records and a lot of other records as well. So I would say to young players, to really study music completely, and I mean, be acquainted with recording and Pro Tools, be acquainted with writing, producing, the entire gamut, the business side of the business, and everything. I think you have to really just dive into everything. And
you mentioned something that caught my ear. In all the heavy pressure situations you've been in and thrive in, and you dig it, you said producing, that's a lot of pressure.
Producing never seemed to be that much pressure because you're in control of everything, and the only pressure is the pressure you put on yourself. But when you're working for someone else and you're writing for a movie, that's when there's a lot of pressure because they usually come with 4 or 5 people who all have opinions, and they generally don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want. So you get negative, and very little positive. So that was pressure, but producing records wasn't really, and it doesn't really feel like it's a lot of pressure because you're in control of the record. Right. You're just trying to make the best possible record that you can with the artist. So
I wonder if you have a particular anecdote from your illustrative history where maybe somebody said a cryptic thing to you or some crazy shit happened in the studio. There's got to be some stuff in there.
Well, I'd have to think about that, but off the top of my head, I'd say you can't fall in love with anything you play that you really feel because they may not be feeling it. So you have to really be able to give and sacrifice a lot of times. And that can be very difficult because, first of all, they leave you to your imagination and you come up with something that you're really feeling and then they reject it. It's tough to come back from that, but that's something you have to learn to do, that you really can't fall in love with what you want to do because it could very easily be changed.
You have to be very diplomatic, too, in the studio.
You have to be very, very diplomatic, and you have to really want to please. I mean, I always wanted approval. I played for approval. I wanted them to be happy and jumping around, and I wanted to do it as quickly and as I possibly could, and as perfectly as I could. So, I was always seeking approval, so that was perfect for me.
Let's talk about your sound, without really focusing on gear so much, but do you feel as a studio player that you have a sound, or that, the old joke is, don't worry, we'll get this right if it takes every penny you've got?
Oh, yeah. I've used that before. I've used that.
As long as it's a joke. But you know what I'm saying. Do you come in with an idea of this is Harvey Mason's sound, or you bring 12 snare drums in and say, hey, man, pick whatever you want?
I used to bring in a case with snare drums up to so many snare drums. But I'm flexible. In the old days, when I first started out, we played toms with only one head, in the mold of Hal Blaine, and multiple toms, and the snare drums were dampened. It was no fun to play on them because they didn't give any bounce, but they sounded flabby. Everything was like that. And I got through it because I wasn't used to playing that way, but I adapted, and actually helps your chops, to tell you the truth. And then we moved to where there were 2 heads, and sounds changed. Things were a little more articulate. They had a little more bite, a little top end, and so things have just evolve. You know, I know a couple guys that still have the same drum heads on their drums from the '70s, which is a pretty cool idea because people want that sound now from time to time. So, but I'd keep a set like that. But the sound has changed, and now it's going back to a sort of darker, muffled kind of sound, but with two heads. I'm actually amazed that drummers, young guys, are going back to that kind of sound. It's mushy and it's not really very clear and articulate, but that's kind of what it is today. And sometimes guys even ask me to go back to that other sound. So I dampen up the snare drums and wet it down. And right now I'm playing with 3 snare drums. My live, I use a regular standard snare drum, then I use a 10-inch piccolo, and then I'm using a 15-inch, almost a field drum that sounds like an Al Green date. And I've used those 3 together. It creates some great contrast.
So you've got a high, medium, and a low kind of there.
Yep.
That's what I meant earlier when I said rather than say hi-hat and snare drum, I meant right hand, left hand, because you are using so many sound sources there. Hi, this is Michael Vosbein, your host for Drummer Nation, and I do the show as labor of love, but I could use a little help. If you'd like to be a patron of the show, please go to the site patreon.com/drummernation. Help us out. Thanks. How about cymbals? What's your take on cymbals? You know, I'm a cymbal guy, and I always like to talk cymbals.
Well, you know I'm a cymbal guy.
Yeah.
I was one of the first signings with Bob Zildjian at Sabian, so I was with him for many years, and after he died, the kids discarded me. They said, we don't want that deal anymore, so
Really?
Yes. And it's really funny, you know, and they said, we're not going to advertise you, nothing. So, at any rate, but a very funny thing happened. I got a call from a guy from London who said, listen, we have a cymbal company, and we'd love you to will you just try our cymbals? Because we love the way you play cymbals, we love your sound, I said, sure, I'll try them, send them. They sent them to me, and it was a big crate, and it was from Turkey, and I opened them up, because anyone that sends something that big and bulky and costs that kind of money, that's a serious investment. I went right down to my studio, opened up the box, and started playing the cymbals, and every single one of them sounded great. I was amazed. I wrote the guy back immediately and told him I love the cymbals. Who are they? What are they doing? And next thing I know, I'm co-owner.
Really?
Murat Daril Cymbals.
No kidding. I didn't know that. I wasn't a setup. I didn't know that. Well, congratulations, Harvey. One cymbal guy to another. We did Boz for a while. Then I had a Crescent. I sold it to Sabian, but I spent 10 or 11 years running a cymbal company. So you're a co-owner.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful, man. Are you enjoying that?
Well, it's a little tricky right here in the United States. There must be 33 cymbal lines.
Yeah, tell me about
it. But we're thriving in Europe, and we're in Japan now, and we're in Africa, different countries. But we have not really made a major push here. They're in one store here in New York. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, is it Steve Maxwell?
Steve Maxwell's taking some of them on.
And we
have a depot here in LA. We've been to a couple of shows, but we haven't been to the show here. But it's been a slow process, and of course, finances is a big deal. You know.
I hear you, brother. It's slow. It's expensive. Small companies have enormous marketing expenses, and they have you. So that's a big step in the right direction. And I've heard those cymbals; they're wonderful. Now that's a Turkish palette of sounds, which are generally darker, right?
Right there. You know what? There are a few different. There are probably 6 different lines that we have. We pared it down. They have so many different types of cymbals, but the cymbals are absolutely stunning. And one of the things I love about them, each one, they're individual. You know, there's no cookie cutter. It's not like all the 18s going to sound the same, all the 20s. First, there are 5 different lines, different processes, and then each one cymbal made sounds different, which I love. So it's like going into a candy store and saying, oh, I love that, but I love that, I love that. So, and for me in recording, I always had a lot of different cymbals, and now I'm truly in love with my cymbals. And when those cymbals came, and I picked the ones I was going to use, they immediately made a difference. You know, guys in the studio, engineers were saying, I love those cymbals, what are they? I love those cymbals, what are they? And that's a fact. This is not jive, it's the truth. And even guys live say the same thing. So I've picked wonderful, wonderful cymbals, and I have some other cymbals. I'm reluctant to even switch some other things in, but I have so many wonderful cymbals now, and I slide them in and take them to dates.
Well, I know full well what you mean with engineers and people in the band looking back and going, wow, it doesn't hurt my ears, or it warms up the mids, or it makes the band sound better. You know, it's and there's room out there for everybody. I would never disparage another simple company's products, but I love that dark stuff for that reason. And you can still you can still get all the stick you need.
Right, I get all the stick I need and the clarity, and it cuts through everything without any unwanted overtones. They're clear, they're pure, but at the same time, you don't hear a note, but you hear a presence. That's really nice. And the splash cymbals are very versatile as well. So I'm truly in love with the cymbals, and I would have played them one way or the other. And it was just a gift that came to me at an appropriate time, and I immediately switched everything over. The only thing that I ended up duplicating, if I might say that, were my hi-hats, which are very special, and I use those, and they're 13s. Everybody else is using large. I was using 13s because it was so articulate, and they had a flat top.
Because so that very clean sound we were talking about earlier. You had a flat top on a hi-hat?
Yep.
I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah.
Well, anybody else use that? Did you get that from somebody else, or is that your idea?
No, Seawind tried them a few years ago, and I fell in love with it, and it worked on. I've been on a lot of records. The hi-hats cut through. You know, they just cut and they're clean.
I never thought of that. I've seen guys put rivets in hi-hats. I've seen 13s and 14s like Max used to do.
Yeah.
But I've never seen somebody put a flat on the top. I'm sorry, I should have been a little more conversant in your cymbal company and all, but I managed to miss. I didn't catch that. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you.
Wish you very well. We'll have to have a beer or a lunch or something one day and just talk cymbals.
Oh my goodness, we can talk cymbals.
Cymbal guy to cymbal guy.
Oh yeah.
I'm
well, congratulations on you guys with Jeff Hamilton.
I'm simple.
And, you sold Crescent, right?
Yeah, we did. We sold it to Sabian, and they've been great to work with. And you know how those things are. It's the personal dynamics of those firms when you work with artists. It works or it doesn't. And we've been very happy. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, Harvey. I really appreciate this. What's going on right now? You're touring with your band Chameleon?
Well, actually, I'm touring with. I'm leaving in 10 days to go to play Java Jazz with my band Chameleon. And in the interim, I'm making a new record with my two sons, my oldest son, Harvey, and my youngest son, who's a manager and works with Quincy Jones. So both kids are, and my daughter's a mortgage banker, so they're all very successful. I'm very proud of them. So, but the two guys are producing a new record for me, so I'm letting them take the reins. I've relinquished control.
Yes, well, carefully to the right people.
Oh, yeah, these guys they're on the money. They've grown up with music, and they have great, fresh ideas, and they're saying, come on, Dad, let's go. Here we go. So it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that and the release of that, and playing a few concerts with Fourplay. We'll see what the year brings, because I'm looking forward to playing with a lot of fresh and new people. So that's what I'm going to use that time for. I've been playing with a lot of young guys as well.
I had a friend years ago who said his dad was a musician, and he told him, when you're a young guy, you need to get with some older players to learn how to play. But what he didn't say is, when I got to be an older player, I needed to work with some younger guys.
That's what I've been doing. You know,
yeah.
I've been doing that. I've had Mark DeClyde playing with me, Mono Neon playing bass, Kamasi Washington played with me, played tenor saxophone for quite a while. So, I just recorded with Terrence Martin and his whole crew. So. I'm enjoying it, you know. I'm looking forward and hanging out and playing and listening to the young guys and seeing what I can steal from them, since they all say they stole from me. But it always comes out differently, you know. So
you can't. Jeff Hamilton's my business partner. I've sat down at his kit right after he stood up, and his sticks, his cymbals, I can't get his sound. I can't get your sound. Nobody can get each other's sound. You know what I mean?
It's fun though. I really do enjoy listening to it. And the fact that I adapted to what I can do, which is great. So that's what it's about. Yeah, Jeff's wonderful. I love Jeff.
Well, there's nobody in the industry who says anything other than the greatest things about Harvey Mason. And I'm thrilled that you were my guest today. You've been very gracious with your time and generous, and I sure do appreciate it, Harvey.
Well, Michael, thank you very much. And I hope it's a good interview. I hope it was informative, or I hope it inspires or illuminates a few things that people may have wanted to know. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to the next time we can do this in the studio.
Yes, let's do it again face to face, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much, Harvey.
Thanks, Michael. Bye-bye.
is your host, Michael Vosspine, and I'd like to thank our friends at Cymbals, Sound Synergies, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, and Drum Center of Portsmouth. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.